Hello, and welcome back to the Zero BS Estate Agency podcast, the show that cuts through the industry noise and tells it like it is. I'm your host, John Savage, and in today's episode, we're diving into one of the most critical yet overlooked skills in estate agency, knowing when to walk away. Joining me today is Jamie Fisher, a straight-talking, no-nonsense agent who knows that real success comes from honesty, not desperation. We're tackling why overvaluing properties to win instructions is killing deals, and how top agents master the pricing strategy, and why the strongest agents don't beg for business, they attract it by being the most trusted voice in their market. Now, Jamie has built his reputation by focusing on market reality, not seller fantasies. And in this episode, he shares how to navigate tricky conversations with sellers, the psychology behind pricing, and why being a yes man will always come back to bite you on the arse. So, if you are sick of the BS in this industry and want to sharpen your skills as a true professional, you are in the right place. Get ready, because this episode is going to challenge the way you think about pricing, the way you think about clients, and your role as an estate agent. So Jamie, what is the one thing that truly maximises the value of someone's home when they go to sell their property?
I would say hands down the agent themselves, the estate agent themselves. There's a number of caveats to that though. But before I reel them off, I'm not going to suggest I get them right every time myself or anyone does. But I think there's three caveats to the agent, and I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is their authenticity in the market. So how authentic they are when they come around the property, in terms of one, their personality to the seller, because we've all been an agent where you put on a different mask for different sellers. But what I mean is actually listening to the seller's needs and aligning yourself with that seller. And all for the authenticity to walk away from something if it's not right. So that's one of the biggest reflections, I think, in the current market, where the volume game is completely out the window now. So I've been doing it for 24 years. So I've worked I've worked for corporates, independents, my own business. And without, I think a lot of agents probably would admit it, but from my point of view, it's always been fairly volume based in a town where you want to be the number one agent in terms of market share, because you've got overheads and you've got targets to meet. And when I work for corporate, the authenticity is actually look at the seller in front of you and say, is this the right match for me? Either as an agent or whatever price, you know, if you've actually demonstrated the price and they're way out of kilter with where you're at, the authenticity to walk away from that as opposed to list it as a number. So that's the first point. The second point is knowledge and data for an agent. So you've had Simon on your podcast,
Mm-hmm.
Simon Gates. And other people as well. There's so much data out there for an agent now, but there's two parts of the data I think are a key. One is working out the pound per square foot from someone my age, or pound per square meter, someone younger, in your local area, because I think I've seen in the last few years that is becoming more and more accurate in terms of the sale price, whether second hand or brand new, and you can work with that. And when I come to the last point, I don't think necessarily you go to the house, the seller that's got the biggest garden on the development or the brand new kitchen compared to one down the road that hasn't. I don't think that necessarily comes into play until the agent does factor three.
Mm-hmm.
So the pound per square foot, pound per square meter is really important. And also the data to demonstrate your ability as an agent to be better than others. So you sell 5% more at the asking price than any other agent, or you get close to the asking price than any other local agent, or you sell houses quicker than any other. Like that type of thing as an agent, I think is key, because that would demonstrate you can get the best price for a property by instructing that particular agent. And the last thing would be the marketing strategy itself. So the pricing and the marketing in terms of how it's presented and in terms of presentation online. And because the things about, and I've listed properties for a lot of time. So you often go to a house and they think it's the best house in that road because of a certain reason, and that might not align itself with a certain person, or it may well do. But I mean, in terms of presentation of a kitchen that's brand new, or one that is 40 years old, but might represent an opportunity to knock a wall down and turn it into an amazing kitchen, if that makes sense, is down to the agent themselves and matching the buyer to the property. So the knowledge and data is key, but I think those three caveats are really, make the whole thing as the agent. That
Yeah.
would be my idea of getting what would enable to get the best price for a property. But all of those three caveats are quite key because if an agent doesn't perform the first part properly, then you're out of line with the seller
Yeah.
or
You're
parts
out.
two. Yeah, if
Yeah.
that
So
makes
you're out
sense.
of line with the next two. So the authenticity though, I mean, why, why in your opinion does having the guts, courage to walk away from a sale, right? Why is that key for a seller? Why is that important for a seller that an agent is prepared to walk away?
I think because they're acting um, in the correct manner in terms of one being able to align themselves with the property. Because if you don't believe in the property, i.e., it's coming on at too much money, you think it's worth, or another reason, the seller might not present themselves being overly motivated, and you're thinking, well, then you're not fully invested. And it's the same thing when it comes to a negotiation. So the authenticity works not just the listing, but also the negotiation of the sale, because there might be a buyer that's motivation isn't there, or the offer isn't quite where it needs to be, and you're chasing a quick sale to hit your target for the month or whatever it may be. You have to have the ability to negotiate um, with that authenticity. So you're not doing it for any other reason than to get the seller the best price.
Mm.
And I say that from someone who's been I've worked when I've worked for corporates and you've got your targets hit for the month and you're one sale off and you're negotiating. I've seen it in other people. They're negotiating for a different reason, and you're going into bat for the seller, aren't you? So you should have that authenticity, which is probably the most important part of the three. Because if you don't go over that hurdle, the other two
Yeah,
kind
because
of
the others are
fall off.
going to die deaf. Because actually, if you're doing things for the wrong reasons and you're putting the wrong buyer against the most perfect seller just to try and get a deal over the line, that's going to crumble at some stage because
Yeah,
nothing you will do will impress the buyer if the buyer isn't right for the house. Equally,
no,
if the
no,
seller, if the seller is, I want what I want, I want what I want, and you're the
yeah,
agent that takes that on, they will blame you for getting the price wrong. They will blame you for a lack of activity. They will blame you for all of your stuff, even though it weren't you that actually said
yeah,
it, but you took it on.
yeah, yeah. I actually, and that it's also like, yeah, the seller that wants too much for the property, you're going to get a buyer that's not perfect because it's the one buyer that's come along, and then that buyer you're trying to match up, and it's like putting round pegs in square holes, and you're asking for trouble. So I
Mm.
think that's the key of all of it, actually, because when it comes on to knowledge of data, that's only so good when you're talking about to a buyer at a negotiation about, you know, most of the, say for example, 96% of the properties are selling within 5% of the asking or 2% of the asking price in your local area. You're not going to get to that point unless you've been authentic enough to list the right property
Mm.
because you're going to get the right buyers for it. And
Yeah.
I was talking to an agent the other day that's selling their property, and he buys properties and invests them and sells them on, and he never has a problem selling them. And it's not because he puts a brand new bathroom and kitchen in, because he prices it on point as an agent to sell it. So he gets plenty of buyers there, and the agent that he uses, which is his own company, it's much easier to actually do the job
Yeah.
to quality level.
And I've had buyers in the past when I've asked them for a review. Like, give me a review of my performance of how I've
Yeah,
interacted with you as a buyer. Tell me what you're thinking. And I've had it said to me twice where
yeah,
buyers have said, I don't like the way you keep me on tenterhooks. Like you
yeah,
always make it feel like the door is about to open.
yeah,
And I was like, wow. But actually, what it transpired was that the knowledge was of a standard that was elite in terms of what
yeah,
was happening in the area, to your point, pounds per square footage. The
yeah,
understanding of how to market the property with that knowledge,
yeah, yeah,
the willingness to be authentic with the seller about like where things really stand and being
yeah,
prepared to walk away if a seller doesn't agree what actually transpired is that it wasn't that I was always keeping the door open deliberately by what I was
Yeah,
saying. It was just that the buyer was like, shit, look how many other buyers turned up at that house. Look how many other offers there were. I
yeah,
tell me what I need to do, John, and I'll just get it done.
yeah,
And that is
yeah,
so important because that's as agents, distrusted before we say a word, disliked before we
yeah,
walk through someone's front door. But if you meet the right agent that knows how to position things, exactly what you're saying, you spoke to me off air just a minute ago before we obviously press record. It's now December 19th as we're recording this, and you've got two different properties with first time buyers looking to buy those, but not just buy them, compete on them as well. And
yeah,
then sort of saying, yes, we will work with the seller's timeframes. So what they want
yeah,
to complete next March? Okay, fine. How do we make that happen, Jamie?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that, to your point, that is the difference between a really good elite level agent that understands how to mold and shape the perfect sale, not just for the seller, but for the buyer as well. And that's how you
yeah,
get it through and at, of course, the
yeah,
maximum money, right?
yeah, and a time frame that's was better for everyone as well because everyone's more motivated, and that is the key I think from the start because as an agent marketing and doing that side of things and it comes across from you asked me before we had the start of the podcast about how you nurture a buyer to really want to pay top money for the property, but I think it becomes with the authenticity of the buyer to say we have got people here, this is the situation of the market, and talk evidently about what you can do with the property, how you can extend it, this is what could be done, and your knowledge gives confidence to the buyer that they're dealing with an agent that's knowledgeable, and the house then becomes more of a safe purchase in that sense. So,
Have you
um,
ever said to a buyer or a seller during a transaction, have you ever said to either party, do you know what? Fuck this. Don't buy it. I'm telling you right now as the agent, nah, fuck it. Don't buy it. Or said to a seller, listen, your buyer is not singing to the tune we need them to be singing to. And you know it's all right and fair because you know
yeah,
knowledge, know how, understand the game. Have you
yeah,
ever done that?
I think like certainly with sellers, um, because you build up more of a rapport. So that's something quite a common situation because you can have that honest conversation. If you're feeling uncomfortable at a buyer, then you can be honest. I always am anyway, because I think it builds more respect. Because again, and you've probably been there yourself, you get chain checks, and the agent say, yeah, it's all fine, it's going fine, and you know something's up, and then it falls through 3 weeks later, and you know it fell through probably the day you rung them, and it's that dishonesty. It's bad, but with the sellers, I always build that because they will listen to you and they'll trust you. So then
Mm.
if it does pick, if you need to get this back on the market, they listen to you. Otherwise they don't want to lose the house they're buying, and I will everyone tell. And I've had chains before where everyone's telling a lie because they don't want it to fall through, and nothing's moving because there's an incomplete chain or something at the bottom. But the buyer side of things, again, I've the viewer the two offers we've had on one of these properties, I've had a conversation. I know their affordability because we've sold their property as well, and you're just honest and said, look, with what you want need to spend on this house, I don't think this is the one for you. You've gone your best and final, you're a few thousand off. There'll be more. We've got more coming on in the new year, and they're like respect that. Otherwise, they're going to
Mm.
end up stretching themselves like hungry hippos trying to grab it, and they'll only pull out a month later when their mortgage is too tight. Does that make sense? So,
Mm.
definitely have them conversations because both parties then understand you're a human.
Yeah.
You're not. You're
I think
not.
so. I'm getting from this what you're saying is it's about basically giving people choice and making sure
Yeah,
they understand the choice. And also that gives you as the agent through the authenticity, the choice to either get into bed with someone because you're going to be in bed with them for not just a long time in terms of over the period of property before it goes to market, when it goes to market, the launch day, when you then negotiate and how you negotiate offers. Then you're talking about the process of making sure that the survey gets booked in within a couple of weeks of the offer being accepted.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
making all sure all those things are happening. Plus, when the bomb goes off or a grenade goes off, that there is something inside a freehold title that you never knew actually could ever exist in a title, but is suddenly there.
yeah,
How do we
yeah,
untangle that? Equally, when you're dealing with all the chain, you as the agent, you have to know the process. You have to know within an inch of its life what questions to ask, what punches you need to see coming, right? Because
yeah,
as you said, when the day you called the agent and you knew the fucking deal was off, but yet they went, no, no, it's fine. And then finally the truth comes out 3 weeks later.
yeah,
Yet If they had all taken a leaf out of your book and told the bloody truth, then at
Yeah,
least the agents could actually get together in that chain and go, right, what the fucking hell is a solution here?
yeah,
Speaking
yeah,
to one
yeah,
agent the other day, and he said to me, and I thought, that's novel, never heard of that before. Chain of seven properties. I think it was
yeah,
John Paul Rafferty. And chain of seven properties. Basically, the one at the top couldn't sell because the one at the bottom, right, couldn't sell. So the chain, they weren't going anywhere, but
yeah,
everybody else in between was doing the right thing. Guess what? John was like to the guy at the top, to make sure we get this through, have you thought about buying the one at the bottom?
yeah.
And the guy at the
I
top bought
think,
the one at the bottom, and that's how they got the chain through. So simple. I've never thought of that, right? But so
no,
simple, just to ask the question, just to get it
yeah,
through.
yeah. You've got to have some, balls to answer that question now, because it's a bit of an odd, because he's not buying the house that he wants to buy. He's
Yeah.
buying a property that's completing a chain. But that's what an agent's for, isn't it? That well, not for. That's what an agent does. That thinks on their feet and moves people, because that wouldn't have moved anywhere. And I had a chain recently where I always check on Rightmove when I'm doing the progression, because one of them could be lying, right? And it was on Rightmove, back for sale. Is everything all right? Yeah, it's fine. So I spoke to my seller and said that this is what's happening, and my buyer is up in the furniture. This is what's happening. So rather than rock our boat, let's get yours back. It wasn't with me; it was with another agent. Their agent didn't want to put it back on. No, no, it's fine. And they were like, Jamie telling me over and saying it isn't fine. So I phoned the agent and said, look, I'm not trying to rock the boat here, but just put it back online. If you keep the buy, it retires up. And you just got the wheels moving.
Mm.
But that takes a bit of self-control. It's easy to let it go. But I kind of, my own business as well worked out why that is. Um, and the changes I've done with the business in the last 8 months, because I looked at what I had as a business and I was like, I think most agents end up falling into that trap, whether it be overheads or costs or if you work some of the repetitive nature of trying to hit your target, it can become a bit of a grind. So you end up cutting corners. Someone gave me a really good analogy years ago, and it stuck with me. So I was like, well, actually, that's probably why most agents end up in that trap. They lose the authenticity,
Mm.
because when you start, you're nervous. Whatever job role you start at, or whether you progress through an agent, you're very nervous when you take the next rung up ladder. So you do it with so much authenticity because you don't want to get it wrong.
Mm.
And then as you become good at it, you might cut your corner. And I think the authenticity is the first thing that goes in an agent, not on purpose either. Half the time, I think they just lose sight of it.
Yeah. But the problem is that when you're standing on one side of the street and the side you're standing on is £1,400 a
Yeah,
square foot, and then you're looking 10 meters across the road and it's £2,000 a square foot,
yeah,
that's a fucking massive difference when it comes to selling either flat on either side of the road, like
yeah, yeah,
huge.
yeah, yeah,
And then all that happens is just you end up as an agency. How much money are you wasting on trying to get viewings on a flat that you can't sell
yeah,
because you know what I mean, and hoping. But then the sellers are like, yeah, but you told me my house was worth £2,000 a square foot,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
wasn't. It was
yeah,
£1,400 a square foot. Do you know what I mean? And it ain't
yeah,
going to take
yeah,
many square feet to suddenly be a dramatic gap between what
yeah,
something's really worth. And then you can't really
yeah,
blame the seller. But I love your point about being authentic enough to walk away. Do you
yeah,
find when you've walked away and you've kept the door open for a seller, should it go wrong,
yeah,
do you find then that the actual sellers, when they do come back to you, are a lot more receptive about the advice that you're giving them?
yeah. And so a lot of this I take from personal experience. So my business, as it was before I changed the model, was built on high costs, overheads, two offices, three offices, whatever, staff, I become a bit of a victim of my own of that myself. Like we need to keep the market share. We're a local agent in this area. We're number one. We need to take the properties on. But what I found is once I started to walk away from some, or effectively say I'm not comfortable with that price. So if you want to market that, I'll leave it with the other agent. Is that they come back to you because you're authentic. So that resonates with them. And then they're actually much more receptive to either listing it, not often at a lower price, but more open to a plan which they then stick to. So because I've always been there where, well, I'm not too comfortable with the price, but we'll take it and see how we go. And then we go through the marketing cycle. 4 weeks is our reduction point or price change point, and they're not welcome with that 4 weeks down the line. But when you walk away, they've come back to me, and more recently, will I say this as well, because we've started to do that as a business, and they're really receptive to it. If they're not going to list it at the lower price to start with, they're very receptive to a plan that will be within 2 weeks it will reduce, or if that makes sense. So I think I think if you are authentic, they'll see that and they'll realise you're the person to market with, because you're going to give them the honest truth when it needs to be said.
Yeah.
It's that first hurdle when everything's all rosy and you walk through the door and it's all nicely to be as. And again, that's where the data comes in, because when you're proving your point, you need to have the data there to be authentic, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. To make sure you're backing yourself. I remember one lady, we were literally the Queen's last resort, and she had given her property to all the agents but us.
Yeah,
And she said, John, the reason I've not given you this property is because you're telling me your fee is 2%. And you've
yeah,
initially told me £60,000 less than what the other agents have told me, and their fee's 1%.
yeah,
When she eventually, because I was, every so often, how's it all going? The fly in the ointment was she got an offer at 485 straight away.
yeah,
And then, unfortunately, the anchoring effect killed her, because she then was basing every financial decision and consideration on that money. She had
yeah,
spent that money on another place in Wallingford, on a really beautiful cottage. But the buyer realized, actually, I'm paying far too much money for this. Cold
yeah,
feet, buyer's remorse, pulled out. And then she was on the merry-go-round of all the other agents. So when she eventually told me, look, you're 2%, you're £60,000 less, I was going, look, your place is still not worth the 485 that all the other agents are telling you.
yeah,
Because if it is, you'd have sold it by now. You've been on the market for almost a year.
yeah,
What I'm now going to tell you is that you're going to be lucky to get 400 grand, but my fee's still 2%. Well,
yeah,
why is your fee 2% if you're now telling me even less? Well, because I have to somehow magically hope that Harry Potter and Hogwarts exists to try and get this through to you, because that's the power that we're going to need to get your house sold. It's been on the market for that long. Eventually, it was sold for 395 grand, right?
yeah,
She'd have listened to me day one, week one. She'd have got the 425.
yeah,
But
yeah,
now the market doesn't want something other buyers don't want, and especially
yeah,
something that's been on for all that time. And the stress and anxiety that that woman was going through was horrific and not right
yeah.
and not fair.
No, no. So when you see that side of things, that's what makes you realise you've got to do it properly. With that authenticity and everything follows from there. Because you do see horror stories all the time, don't you?
Yeah, because ultimately you're playing with people's lives. And I always
Yeah,
say that today's buyer is tomorrow's seller. So if you're always treating people right and fairly,
yeah,
and to your point, actually keeping them in the loop so they know they've got a choice, both buyer and seller. If the buyer's being a dickhead, politely tell them. If the seller's being out of order, politely tell them, and prepared to just rub people up the wrong way. But I always think to myself, if I'm going to take a property on, I want to know that I've got a shot at actually selling it. Like, this seller actually is really going to sell the house, like really going to
yeah,
sell it. If they have to pull away or pull out for any reason, that's absolutely fine. But if I get the impression that they're not really being completely upfront and honest and truthful, I'm not going to waste a buyer's time that falls in love with a property that a seller has no intention of selling. They'll just
yeah,
put it on the market for a crack. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So I think that is, no one so far in the 53 podcasts, I think this is the 53rd one, has
yeah,
said authenticity.
yeah. I had it in my head, and I was like, I was trying to think the word for it earlier on, because I don't know the answer to the question, and it just popped in my head. It was the word. I couldn't quite get the word for ages, but yeah, that is what it is. I think, because
Mm.
to be authentic in every property, it's difficult as an agent when you're target driven and all that, because there's times when you need to deviate from that. I think that's one of the probably the biggest issue with the industry, isn't it?
But
Because
as
if
a
you're
business,
authentic in every listing,
But as a business owner, Jamie, right, you can speak from first-hand experience. What does it feel like though, knowing you've got the overheads, knowing you've got salaries to pay. There's the corporation tax bill. There's other taxes that may be business rates. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
not just rent for the office, maybe, or fuel, car
Yeah.
insurance, public
Health and
liability.
safety. Yeah, all that
How,
here.
what does it feel like though to be actually now be in that position? Because I imagine it's one thing being a negotiator and getting paid, right?
Yeah.
Regardless each month, but to be
Yeah.
the business owner, that must take balls of steel to, so, you know, to go actually, do I just sing to the seller's tune and just see what
Yeah.
happens? Or
Yeah.
how hard is it?
Yeah. It is hard. I mean, from experience of setting up your own agency, when you start out, you're an agent. You just happen to own it, and you're in there with the trenches with your business partners or partner, whatever, or on your own in some cases. And then as you grow, it does evolve, and then suddenly you've got the overheads, but it's difficult. It's probably the biggest challenge I've found because as a person, I can put myself in the let's look after the costings camp of a business owner, but you've also got to be that kind of driver of the business. But when things aren't going so well and you've got the bills to pay, that's when you start to maybe cut across the corner because we need to get that money in. We need to get so many listings. And I think that's where I have struggled, definitely. I looked at the business after a good start to 2024 and thought the overall factor for me to keep on top of everything and make sure we are authentic and we are doing this is quite taxing on me as a like personally. Some people are better, I know business owners they've got traditional estate agents, friends of mine that do fantastically well. But I'm one of these people I can put my cap on as an authentic estate agent or as an authentic business owner, but try and drive the two I found quite difficult
Mm.
because when you're in the driving seat as the lister, say, as a business owner or lister, you can control that. When you've got staff members doing it who, everyone, I still need development and coaching. You know, we spoke about that the other day. With
Same here.
with what we've got going into next year, is it's easy to sometimes cut a corner. We get those three on. Buy to let landlord selling three because three instructions on Rightmove, but it doesn't always equate to business. And I think when you start out, you're very authentic because your overheads are this, and you want to be the best agent you can be to prove yourself in your new company. So it has been quite a journey for like that.
Mm.
And what we've done we've turned it into like a brokerage self-employed model is twofold. One, it's kind of reduced the overheads a lot because I've had the balls to walk away from premises, which I wouldn't have done beforehand. Which then frees up the overheads a bit. So you automatically can be more authentic. And then secondly, the team that you have are all doing it themselves. So does that make sense? So
Mm.
they have to be authentic because what they quickly realise is they can run around like headless chickens and not make any money. And when you're not getting a guaranteed wage every month, that seems a bit silly, doesn't it? So we're taking on better stock because no one, everyone's got to put food on the table as a self-employed agent within my team, within the brokerage. So it's becoming a slightly better model just by default, I think, on that.
Do you think the self-employed model is going to be the model in the next sort of 7 to 10 years?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think there's two things that are going to happen. I don't know what the corporates are going to do. That Let's chuck loads on the market for market share, and because the independents can do that much better. So the independents that thrive, and there will be some with high street offices, I think, will probably have less offices, but they'll still have a very traditional type business. They might adapt to have a lot of hybrid, I think, because I think independent can adapt more. But I think for majority of agents like myself, I've got a new lease of life coaching people that are their own business owners because I've been there, and you can be authentic with them because you've been there yourself. And I think that model. So I've met in the model with EXP. One of the biggest things I noticed the first session over I went to, I met some amazing people that started from their living room with no brand, and they'd just been authentic people, and they weren't high flyers or showy off it. They were just genuine people that wanted to help. Now, some of them are market leaders and really go to people in their community. And others are probably slip under the radar a bit. If you were looking at a right move graph, they wouldn't be anywhere near the top for market share. But what they do is every time they help someone move, they change their lives for the better. Or because I've seen their reviews and the recommendations of the local Facebook groups, they're getting the recommendations because they're authentic. They might only be authentic to 2 people every month, but if they're happy, then the sellers and the buyers are happy. That's all that matters, isn't it? Really, it doesn't have to be times 100. In some cases, it is because people want that volume, if that makes sense. So, I think that model will be, for that reason, will be what it will be the biggest factor in the industry. I think because it enables an agent to be who they are. So, I worked for Countrywide for a number of years when the local agency group was pretty hands-on, more like an independent, I would say. And I worked for Countrywide when it became top-down. You'll say the same thing. Mm. And I wasn't comfortable with that. So I wasn't authentic. I worked for a year as a manager with a team, and I wasn't myself. I wasn't being myself. So how can you be the best you can be if you can't be yourself? So the self-employed model enables everyone to be there, whoever they need to be, for however many people they need to be happy. And then you might need to exchange on 2 a year or 150, but the result will be the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Just because if you are being true to yourself, you're not then looking over your shoulder. You're actually feeling like you're making real impact. And because you're not looking over your shoulder, you're not scared about what you're about to say next, because you know it's going to be for the right reasons. So, and I do share your view on the corporate. I think it is changing. It's changing massively right now, and I think it will continue to change. And I think you're going to end up having agents that are self-employed that are running postcodes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it would come down to more who a person resonates with, who wins the instruction, not the agent that said the things that sound nice to win the instruction.
Yeah, I quite agree. I mean, we've had guys at postcodes now, but I think that you think to yourself, we haven't got offices now. And we've actually our market share we didn't go into it to increase our market share. It's naturally increased. Mm-hmm. And I think it's probably because the people who are operating in those postcodes are themselves. And I've got, a couple of guys taking on themselves 10, 12 a month, and a couple taking on 1 or 2, but they're both successful in their own right because they're doing what they need to do to provide the service, because you can get over busy. If you've got too much stock on, then for some people, they've got different variances of what that is. So I think you can be yourself on that, which is what it's all about, I suppose. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Jamie Fisher, mate, honestly, authenticity, 100,000,000%. I think you're leading with that. Then that is the way forward. Mate, thank you so much for coming on this podcast.
No, been a pleasure.
No, the pleasure's all mine, mate. Literally, I could talk to you all bloody night. Right. But yeah. Thanks very much, mate.
No worries, mate. It's good.
Huge thank you to Jamie Fisher for bringing Real Talk today. If there's one thing you take away from this episode, it's this. Top agents don't just show up. They know their worth, they master their craft, and they don't rely on luck to get results. Now, if you found this episode valuable, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with an agent who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit that follow button so you don't miss what's coming next. Until next time, be the agent who sets the standard, not the one who makes excuses.